So after I left Intel, I was still in good communication with the Russian team, and I had started to do startups. So I went off and did a VideoSurf, which is a video search startup, and it was eventually sold into Microsoft. At the time, this was the first video search startup there was. And so I joined, we worked hard, but at Stanford I was still there as Sebastian Thrun invited me as a consulting faculty. And so I was spending time there and then at work, and I decided, through that I met Andrew Ng, a sort of famous AI professor, and he told me about a robotics startup, Willow Garage, which is kind of an incubator for the robotics future.
The goal of Willow Garage was to kickstart the robotics industry, and for that, a common framework had to be created so that robots could be built upon. This framework was ROS, the Robots Operating System, and it is now open source robotics foundation. One of the mottos of Willow Garage was not to reinvent the wheel. And to create this framework, robots needed to see, so they needed computer vision. And instead of reinventing a computer vision library, ROS decided to sponsor OpenCV to really serve the purpose of robotics. For example, when a robot needs to see, the robot also needs to interact with the environment, and therefore there needs to be a calibration between the cameras and the hand grippers of the robot.
Willow Garage was a company with this amazing culture, a blend of academic research approaches. They were solving problems that nobody knew how to solve, and a spirit of delivering each week. Every week you had to show something new. It was an amazing experience working amongst so many smart people. And the problems we were working on, I don't have a rational explanation for this, but every time a robot does something smart with a camera, I get this childish delight, as if I just entered a huge candy store.
So we did a lot of research there, and at the time I was in touch with a lot of the Russian team who were growing increasingly frustrated that they weren't able to work on this vision, no resources, no time to work on OpenCV, and Vadim and I and a few others were limping OpenCV along. So at Willow Garage, I said we really need an open infrastructure for vision. They were already building one for the ROS operating system. Interestingly, at Stanford, with my co-author of the book on OpenCV, Adrian Kahler, we had started this thing called Redwood, which is the precursor of ROS. In fact, some of the mistakes we made a computation graph. They corrected in a message passing system in ROS. And that came over the Willow Garage. So they're building up software, and that's where I revamped OpenCV. So I not only got funding to pay both Victor. Victor was starting up ITSEs. Their team was starting up a contracting group, but they didn't really have enough contractors to get this going with all of them full time. So I gave first Victor a contract to start working on further OpenCV for robotics. And then Vadim wasn't getting any time for OpenCV at Intel, and so I told Intel, I gave him a 2-week warning, I'm gonna hire him away if you don't give him time. And they wouldn't, and then I hired him away, and then they wanted him back, but no such luck.
ITSEs was later known as the team that developed and supported OpenCV, but early on we worked on products that just used OpenCV, like a multi-projector visualization system, a people counter for retail, and we were a perfect example of a startup that benefited from the existence of OpenCV. What were the chances of our team of few people to create full solutions used by many customers without such a library?
The collaboration between OpenCV and ROS is still very present, and over time there were quite a few things that were borrowed from one another. For example, OpenCV switched to Git, seeing the success of ROS switching to Git. The forum of OpenCV is also inspired by the one from ROS. So really, there is a strong collaboration between the two projects, even to this day.
Willow came at a critical time and gave OpenCV breathing air till the time its seas ramped up and could develop the library, and multiple companies like Intel and NVIDIA supporting the project financially.
During the summertime at Willow Garage, we had as many interns as employees. We always saw interns as a great workforce, very motivated, with a lot of fresh ideas, and really up to date with the research. So when Google offered the possibility to have a collaboration between students and OpenCV through Google Summer of Code, we really used this opportunity to really have OpenCV move forward. Over time, there have been contributions as simple as having better tutorials or cross-language tutorials, up to really advanced machine learning and object recognition algorithms, for example. This is really a great opportunity for OpenCV to stay close to its users and also be up to date with the latest and coolest algorithms in computer vision.
I joined OpenCV first, probably 3-4 years ago, during the Google Summer of Code. So at that time I was a master student in robotics and control and vision. And then I found out this Google Summer of Code program, and at that time I was doing or planning to do my master thesis in computer vision. So then it's when I found this scholarships program, whatever you want to call it. And then I started digging into the projects in OpenCV. During the different courses we had in computer vision, we were barely using OpenCV. And I got some interest on that. I also was contributing already with ROS for robotics. And that's how more or less I get in contact with OpenCV. I started the process for applying for Google Summer of Code, and then when I started to interact with some of the mentors. And this is more or less the process that I followed then to be more in contact. OpenCV, it's kind of open in the sense that it's very easy to get in contact with them. OpenCV has an open Google group where you can just join for free and then just post questions there about the different ideas, or if you even have an initial draft of your proposal, then it's very easy to get some feedback there, even as I said before the submission deadline. I think that participating in the Google Summer of Code, in the end, it's like to get a very great line in your CV. But apart from that, you get a lot of different skills. So participating in open source, I think it's quite important in software engineering in general, because in the end, it's like open source is like a big community, and you try to build things together with other people. So, and usually at university, when you are a student, I mean, you are attending to classes, course, and you don't get this kind of experience. You do some works with in groups, but you never interact like in a real project.
But you can see that Google has been a huge supporter of OpenCV. There have been many patches. It's been supported into the open source fuzzing project to make sure that OpenCV doesn't have any security issues. Obviously, Google has been sponsoring OpenCV for the past 10 years through Google Summer of Code, which is a huge thing. But I actually have a little anecdote about a Google engineer named Daniel Phillip that 10-15 years ago was frustrated with the C API of OpenCV, the IPL image, because it was not very friendly with memory management. So he created a wrapper around the IPL image named WImage that would manage the memory automatically, that was also templated on type and number of channels. And actually he showcased it to Gary Bradsky at a conference, and Gary was like, hey, that's pretty cool, you should open source it. And this is what Google did, and that was public. So if you look at the code base, until 3.4, I think, WImage is part of the code base. And that was actually a huge inspiration for the C++ API CVMAT, right? And the CVMAT underscore that were templated also on channels and types.